Hello everybody, my name is the Chemist77 and welcome to a bit of a different video today. A few days ago, live on stream, I did something I've never done before, something that I've wanted to do, and I've attempted a couple of times before, but it's not really gone well. So we did it live, we did it with Elainey, and yeah, it was really, really good. So we have done, as you will have seen by the title, a little bit of a mostly complete beginner's redstone guide. So what this video is going to do, it's going to cover right from the very basics. So if you have no clue what redstone is, you don't know how to find it, you don't know how to use it, then this should hopefully answer most of your questions. There might be a few things missing here and there, in which case please do drop a question in the comments or come find me on my live streams at twitch.tv/thechemist77. But yeah, this was recorded live on one of my streams, and probably by the time this video comes out, I will be done streaming for the year. So do catch me in the new year, sort of from around mid-January time. But yeah, or leave a comment on the video, join the Introm's Discord, there'll be a link for that down in the description below. You can often find me in there to ask questions too. But for now, let's roll the stream and get started. But yes, we do have an Elainey with us today. She is going to be here as our non-technical brain. So she's going to be here asking questions, going, what does that do? What does that do? Why are we doing that? Why are we doing this? And yes, but for the first bit of today, we can.
I'll have you know that why is a very important role that should be taken seriously.
There she is. The why is a very important role, and this is the reason I also have you here. I have tried redstone tutorials in the past. I never uploaded them because I never really fully edited them because I just could not get the tone down right, and it wasn't very natural to me. So having an extra person here to hopefully be able to converse should help with that. And of course, if you're in chat as well, then by all means, ask questions, stop me if something doesn't quite make sense, and we can cover it again. Do you want to rustle any louder into your mic, Elainey? Anyway, let's get this underway then. So, what is redstone? Redstone is basically how Minecraft automates stuff. It can be automating farms, it can be automating a door. But redstone is essentially electronic circuitry in Minecraft, and it can do lots of weird and wonderful things. Now, if you've just booted up the game for the first time and you have popped yourself into a cave, and maybe you're here and you don't even know what redstone is, you're like, what is this redstone stuff and why does it need a guide? If you've been down into the caves, down to the lower parts of the world, you may have seen some of this stuff. Now, this is redstone ore. And now people watching this will understand what I mean when I say beginner guide. And this is one of the ways that you can get redstone. We can get into some other ways, perhaps a little bit later down the line. Talk about villagers and different mobs that you can farm for redstone. And but yes, this is going to be, at least initially, the way that you're going to get your first little bit of redstone. So there's, as with most, well, yeah, all ores in the game have a stone and a deep slate variant. And to mine this, you need an iron pickaxe tier or above. I have... There we go. I had the tar drops off. So you need an iron tool or above to be able to mine redstone. And once you do that, you will get redstone dust. And the amount that you get from it varies. I don't know the exact numbers. Perhaps in the video I might put numbers on screen in post. But yes, so you get more than one typically per block that you mine, and that number can be increased with fortune enchantment. And so what you end up with is this, redstone dust. And if you pick this up, you'll also notice in the recipe, you can craft it into redstone blocks in a 3x3 crafting grid with 9 pieces of redstone dust. Now this is what basically the entirety of redstone is based off. Now you will notice on my screen, my redstone dust may look a little different to yours. I have a resource pack that makes my redstone dust look different. So if I turn this resource pack off, you will see this is what redstone dust typically looks like in vanilla. So you've got single pieces here, connections, junctions, lots of different things. And my resource pack is from Vanilla Tweaks, and there's actually 2 resource packs to make it look like this, one of which is called Smooth Redstone Dust, and the other one is, I forget exactly what it's called, but it's like Redstone Dust Power Levels, and we'll get onto that later on. So that is the basically initial bit of what is redstone dust, how are you most likely to get it in the first, your first Minecraft world that you play at. And yeah, it comes from this red ore, and you'll notice as well there's some particles here. Redstone ore has a fun little mechanic that it'll light up and emit particles when you stand on it. So if I step off here, you can see the light levels, which is I have using a mod called MiniHUD. All the mods that I mention will be linked down in the video description. And you'll see as soon as I step on this, the light level increases. So we have some redstone dust, and we know that it's like electrical wire. So how do we get electrical wire to do stuff? And how do we get redstone wire to do stuff? Or redstone lines, whatever you want to call it. And it's the exact same thing. You have to power it. So how do we power redstone dust? Well, there's a few different ways that we can do this. And if we go into the redstone inventory here, this is where I'm going to be working out of for the majority of this tutorial. We're going to sort of hopefully just sort of slowly work our way through here at all of the different components in here. So if this all looks a bit scary initially, don't worry. Hopefully, eventually, all of this should make more sense. So I'm going to grab a few items out of here. And these are all items that can be used to power redstone. Some of them you may be familiar with that may make sense. Some of them you may look at and go a bit, how do we power stuff with that? I forgot another important one just there.
Magic.
So, let's say we have a redstone line. There's a few different ways we can power this, and for that we use power sources. So one such power source is the redstone block that I mentioned before, that Elainey is so wonderfully standing on there and cosplaying as.
It matches my hair.
So redstone blocks as a power source. So you can see as I place this down next to the redstone dust, it lights up. And as well, we see the number change from 0 to 15, 14, 13, etc. And it's at this point I will briefly mention about signal strength. So when you power a redstone line like we have here and it's lit up, it will have a power number depending on a few different things, and there are ways that we can manipulate this power number. But for now, we're going to say next to any source, it is going to emit a power level of 15. So this redstone block is right next to it here, and it has a power level of 15. And this number goes down by 1 for each block that you get further away from the redstone block, or more accurately, the further down the line you go from the redstone block. So if we take an offshoot from here, you can see this is 14, and it still goes 13, 12, 11, 10 this way. And if we keep bringing it down around here, you go 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Let's not link that up. And so let's say we come way off here, 1 and 0. And so you can see once you get 15 blocks down a redstone line, it becomes depowered. Now there are ways of extending this, and we'll cover that later when we talk about extending signal length. But for now, we are going to come back to our just little redstone line off here and talk about other ways that we can power this. So obviously, redstone blocks are great, but there's not really a lot you can do to turn it on and off, other than physically placing or breaking it. So, well, what else have we got? Well, whoops, that's the wrong button. There's redstone torches. Redstone torches function very similar to redstone blocks. And you can take redstone dust outputs like so. I did not mean to get rid of that. Another source that we have is a lever. Now, levers are very cool. They function similar to redstone torches. Again, signal strength of 15 out of the lever, like so. However, the levers, we can right-click to toggle on and off. So this one, we don't have to place or break anything to turn or to power our redstone on and off. We can just right-click it, and it turns on and off. Now, these are what's known as what you might call toggleable sources or constant sources, in that you can place it down so it's powered, and you can just wander away and leave it, and that will stay powered as long as that source is there. The other types of power sources we have are pulses. So, most commonly, a button. You press the button once, it will turn the redstone line on for a second, and then after a while, it will depower. Now, there are technically two types of button in the game. You have stone buttons and wooden buttons. Now, wooden buttons last longer than stone buttons, as you can see there. And also, wooden buttons can be hit with a bow and arrow. I don't know, Elainey, if you're able to get a bow and arrow out, that'd be great.
B.
So, yeah, you can shoot wooden buttons with an arrow, but you can't shoot stone buttons. That's buttons, that's pulses. Another sort of, I guess these kind of sit, and again, there's wooden. There's a few different variants of these, but we'll just look at wooden and stone variants first. Are pressure plates. Now, these kind of sit somewhere between permanent and pulses, in that they turn on when an entity lands on top of it, and then turn off when something comes off. Now, this is not just true for players. This also holds true for armor stands. And in the case of wooden pressure plates, you can actually throw items on top. However, this is not true for stone pressure plates. Now, the other two pressure plates that you'll see here, light and heavy weighted, they will actually give off a different signal strength, so less than 15, and that can change, and that is to do with how many items are on top of the pressure plate. So whether for light-weighted pressure plates, that is individual items, and for heavy-weighted pressure plates, that is individual stacks of items. But I won't cover those now because they're a little bit weird.
That's a difference. Okay.
Yeah. So now, a more recent addition to the Redstone
Oh, 1 second. Question.
in the book.
Is it the same for
Yes.
gold and iron pressure plates?
Is what the same for gold and iron?
What you were just talking about with the wooden and stone. They also have pressure plates.
That's what I was talking about for gold and iron. So the light and heavy weighted pressure plates, which are gold and iron, they are what give off different signal strength when depending on the number of items. Yes. So wooden and stone will always give off 15. Stone pressure plates do not get activated by items on top of them, like that. Wooden pressure plates do. As do gold, as do iron.
Yes.
So, one of the more recent additions to the Redstone collection of blocks and items is the sculk sensor. Now, sculk sensors take in movement sounds, and they give off different signal strengths depending on how close the sound is. So you can see I'm quite far away here, and it's only giving off a signal strength of 2. As I get closer, you'll see the number get higher until it's 14. And then lastly, for now, we have the observer. Now, observers are a little bit weird. We'll cover them in a bit more detail later on. But the important thing for this current, as we're talking about pulses, is they give off a very, very short pulse. Specifically, a 1 tick pulse.
Redstone tick or game tick?
And yes, this is Elainey is very much right. This is where we're going to talk about ticks. Now, if you don't know, Minecraft processes itself by running in what is known as ticks. So each tick, the game will process the world and everything that is supposed to happen in it. So, for example, you may have heard of random tick speed, which is how the game determines various different operations, whether that's crops growing, copper oxidizing, ice forming, and that by default is 3, and that means a special thing, but I won't get into that now. It's a little bit ahead of where we are currently. Now, Minecraft by default processes 20 ticks in a second. So each second, the game will process itself 20 times, and each of those ticks, it will grow crops, it will trigger redstone, it will test for weather, and everything has a specific order within that tick, but again, we don't need to worry about that now. Now, this is where things get a little bit funky, and that in Redstone operates effectively every other tick. This is where we then have 2 different types, quote unquote, of tick. You have game ticks, which is the base tick that the game operates in, and there's 20 of those a second. And then you have redstone ticks, which is specifically where redstone operates, and that happens every 10 redstone ticks in a second. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to be referring in redstone ticks. However, it is important to note that pretty much all of my other YouTube videos, so my Farm in Minecraft series, and all the farms in there, I typically refer in game ticks. So where this is very sort of mostly important in terms of redstone is looking at repeaters. So, which brings us on to our next things, which is extending pulse length. Not pulse length, signal length. Extending signal length.
Yay!
So,
Length.
I talked about before that there is a max signal strength of 15, and this decays all the way down to 1, and after that, it's dead. It's a 0. Now, one of the ways that we can make this longer is to put a repeater on. And what that does is it repeats the signal.
Do you know what something I've always wondered about repeaters?
Yes? What did you always wonder about
Is
repeaters?
they repeat the signal, but as long as they're powered, it doesn't matter where you put them, they'll repeat the full strength of the signal, even though the signal is basically dying by the time it reaches it.
Yes.
Where you
So
put it.
repeaters, and Elainey is right here, repeaters always output a signal of 15, sorry. So we could put repeaters anywhere along here, and you'll see that because of the nature of repeaters as a redstone component, they pull a little junction off of the line. Not every component does that, so we'll cover that in a use by use basis rather. But you can see at the output of each of these, it's always a signal strength of 15. And if you want to know which way these go, then you can look at this, and there's 2 little redstone torches on here effectively, and one of them is on a line, and one of them is just there, and the line always goes at the back, so it faces this way. There's if you look at the top, there is a slight little arrow in the texture there, and Guffy is right there. Comparators take into account signal strength. But we'll cover comparators in a second. We'll get through signal extending and repeaters first, and then we will cover comparators. You may be wondering, what on earth this then toggle does. You can see if we right click the repeater, it moves this little redstone torch, and this seemingly does nothing currently. And the way it currently is set up, it does nothing. Yes, the setting of a repeater actually does two things. One thing that most people do know, and one thing that people may less know. Yes. So the first thing that this does, and this is where then the difference between referring in game ticks and redstone ticks is important, because each setting on a repeater is one redstone tick. This is one redstone tick, two redstone ticks, three redstone ticks, and four redstone ticks. In my videos, you may hear me refer to it as 2 game ticks, 4 game ticks, 6 game ticks, and 8 game ticks. So this is where the difference between game and redstone ticks is important and prevalent. For the rest of this tutorial, I'm going to be talking in terms of redstone ticks, because this is a redstone tutorial and it's what the majority of the YouTubers out there as well will refer into them. So if you want to go away from this tutorial and go watch another video and you see someone talking about having a repeater set to 2 ticks, you know that that will be set like this. So by default, when you place a repeater, it's already at 1. You click it again, it's at 2, 3, 4, and then cycles back to 1. So the first thing that these repeaters do, that these different tick settings, is add delay. So delay being a small pause before it then powers the next thing. Now I'm going to get rid of this line and set up a little demonstration to visualize this. So I'm going to have a lever here. Now as it stands, this lever is powering both of these repeaters. Now if I get a redstone lamp as a bit of a visual aid here, we can see currently these repeaters are both set to 1 tick. And if I turn it on, both the lamps turn on at the same time. They both turn off at the same time. Now if I set this one to 4 ticks, you'll see that there's actually going to be a delay, and this one will turn on after this one. There you go, and turn off as well. And so that is what these settings do in terms of delay. So, and this is very useful if you're building redstones and you need something to turn on, a piston to fire at a specific time. You can add delays and control when stuff activates. Excuse me. Now, the other slightly less known feature of ticks or tick settings on repeaters is it actually controls the pulse length when you send a pulse into a repeater. So I'm going to set up an observer here to power these. So, and again, it's a bit difficult because bit difficult to see because observers are very quick pulse in powering. In fact, Elainey, you may want to be the one activating the observer if you don't mind. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have on one side, I'm going to have 2 repeaters set to 2 ticks. And on the other side, I'm going to have 1 repeater set to 4 ticks. And we're going to get our lamps as a visual aid. Now, I'm not saying this is 1 tick, because 1 tick actually, particularly when you power by an observer. Okay, no, it does work with the lamp. So there are some things that's actually too short of a pulse to fire. In the case of the lamps, we're fine. Turn the game stick down. That is, okay, that is an option to do. However, in the new Minecraft Vanilla, it also slows down your movement. So I can do a command here. Let me move that up there so you can actually see the command line. So you can actually do a command called tick rate. And if I just hit enter there, never mind. If I hit space, it comes up with a default, which is 20, and that's the normal one. Now, if I can set this to be 10, and that runs it at 10 ticks per second. Unfortunately, though, it actually makes the player move faster, which is honestly terrible, in my opinion. So I'm gonna where possible, I'm gonna keep the tick rate at 20 ticks per second, and let me get this set up here. But yeah, so Elainey, when I say I want you to flick this lever, to trigger the observer. So what we have here is we have 4 observers set to 1 tick, and 1 observer set to 4 ticks. So this means that overall, there is the same amount of delay in this side as this side. You'll see here that the lamps turn on at the same time, but they will turn off at different times because this here has a 4 tick like pulse delay, whereas these ones only ever have 1 that's going to transfer through. So if you hit the lever, you can see this one stays on for longer. So yeah, so you can see that this one here actually stays on for a shorter amount of time than this one, and that is because there's only ever 1 tick of pulse length being transmitted through here, whereas this redstone repeater here is actually transmitting a 4 tick long pulse. And you can see it again, if Elainey, if you keep doing that every so often, these repeaters are on for much less time than this one. Thank you. And so that is perhaps the slightly lesser known aspect of repeaters, in that actually they affect the length of a pulse that gets sent into them. Now, if the pulse length is longer than that, then you can see here it doesn't get affected by it. So if you send in a pulse of length of longer than 4 ticks, then they will both still turn off at the same time, because then you're limited by the delay that you have. So it's 4 ticks delay to turn on, and then this repeater and this repeater, they get triggered as depowering. So this redstone dust and this redstone dust depower at the same time, and then it's 4 tick delay to turn off again. So this is only applicable in very short pulses, such as those that you get out of an observer. And at this point, I'm also going to mention that redstone wire is instant. Redstone wire powers and depowers components instantly. There is no delay unless you add delay in with repeaters. So that is the repeater. Now there are technically a couple other little quirks with repeaters that we definitely won't cover here, one of which even I struggle wrapping my head around, so we won't talk about that. Next, though, we are going to talk about probably one of the most... How do I word this? It's widely regarded as a very confusing redstone component. And that is the comparator. This little thing right here. A lot of people hate this. A lot of people get very confused by it. And understandably, it is a bit of a confusing component. So comparators have two inputs. Okay, 2 inputs and 1 output. So most commonly, the input is in the back, where these 2 are. So these 2 redstone torches, this is the back, and this is what you can call the primary input of a comparator. And it has an output at this little redstone, the single redstone torch here. Now it has a second input in the side, And what a comparator does is it compares these two signals. So if I put a redstone, a lever here, we can see that coming in the back here, there is a signal strength of 11 here. And so this is where we get to the point. Comparators they always operate off of redstone's signal strength. So they will detect a signal strength and output a specific signal strength. And we can control that. So if I then power this one from here, this one, there is actually a signal strength of 13 coming into the side. And all of a sudden we get nothing out here. Well, what's going on here then? Well, if I make this a little bit longer, and I power from here, we get a signal strength of 8 coming in the side, and 11 coming in the back. Because this hasn't changed. And now we get our signal strength of 11 back. So what this comparator does is it compares what's coming in the back with what's coming in the side. And if what's coming in the back is bigger than what's in the side, it will create an output. And if what's coming in the side is bigger than what's coming in the back, it turns off. Now, I will say as well, it also can match. So here we have 11 and 11, and it will still output. And what this means is actually you can do some really small things. If I grab a redstone block here, remember redstone blocks are power sources. So if I put a redstone block here, the comparator is actually reading this as a signal strength input into the side. Now, levers and I believe redstone torches don't do this. Just redstone blocks. And so this is actually very useful because if we have a signal strength of 15, which is the redstone block, its max signal strength, we know that this is then only going to output when there is a signal strength of 15 coming into the back here like that. Now the other mode of a comparator we can access if we right click here. So this little front torch will light up, and this is now in what is called subtract mode. And it does pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. It subtracts signal strength. So here we have a signal strength of 11 going in the back, 9 coming in the side, and now it outputs a signal strength of 2, because 11 minus 9 is 2. If I get this one even further away, there's now a signal strength of 6 coming in. 11 minus 6 is 5. If I move this one closer, 13 minus 6 is 7. And that is what subtract mode does. Now we can actually use this to our advantage to make a really fast clock called a comparator clock. And we'll cover more on clocks later again. By feeding this output back into itself. And this is where I am going to slow down the game. So we're running at 1/10 of the speed. And I apologize, it's going to be very painful moving. But if I turn this on...
Oh my word, that's interesting to watch.
Yeah. So what we can see happening here is it's very quickly flashing. So what's happening here is the comparator is registering that there is a signal strength of 15 coming in the back. So it's outputting 15 just there. This is then feeding round into itself, where we then end up a signal strength of 13 here. And so the comparator, because it's now in subtract mode, is then taking this 15 and taking away 13. So we're left with a signal strength of 2 here. This then means that this signal strength, because of decay, so it goes 2, then 1, then 0, it turns off. So then the comparator's like, okay, well, I've now got 15 coming in the back and nothing in the side, therefore I need to output 15. And that is how this works. It's a constant cycle of the comparator doing 15 minus 13, and then 15 minus 0, and then 15 minus 13, and then 15 minus 0. And so if you run the game normally, you can see it runs really quickly and is very good for making noise generators. For example, if you place a bell, it does that. And this is really easy again to turn on and off. You just power the lever behind it. Now, this is how comparators interact with redstone dust. However, comparators can actually interact with a lot of different items in the game. And one of the biggest things that they're used for is interacting with containers. So I'm going to add a few items here that have inventories into my hand. And place them behind. Now, comparators are pretty cool because they can actually detect how full a container is and give a output with a specific signal strength in relation to how full it is. So a full chest here, like that, has a signal strength of 15. If I get rid of half of these items, just about, there we go, it has a signal strength of 7. If I come over to this hopper here, it's the same thing. If I put 5 stacks in, it's a signal strength of 15. If I have just under 2.5 stacks, it's a signal strength of 7. If I have a stack, it's a signal strength of 3. And so on and so forth. Now, not all containers behave quite like this. So not all of them are basically, if it's full, it's 15, etc. So for example, here I have a crafter. And it's here I'm also going to demonstrate another fun thing of the comparators reading containers, is that they can actually do it through a block. So you can see just here. Now, with crafters, you can click to block out inventory slots in here. And this has the same effect of putting an item in. So you can see in the bottom left there, the comparator's lighting up as I'm putting items in. It does the same. Now with a crafter, rather than being proportional to 15, depending on how full the container is, this just gives a signal strength of 1 through 9, depending on how many slots are either full or blocked off, or a mixture of both. So you can see here, 1 slot disabled, it gives a signal strength of 1. If I put, say, a piece of redstone dust in there, it's a signal strength of 2. If I fill all of these up, it's a signal strength of 9. And now this is very, very useful because this is pretty much the whole basis that item filters, overflow protections are all based off. Detecting how full a container is so we know when to turn a farm off or when to let some resources through in an item filter. And so that then is the last point on the comparator. Now, there's a lot more different blocks and components that comparators can interact with than just these 3. Some of them they interact with even in other different ways. Cauldrons, for example. Cauldrons have a number of different levels, and comparators can read different outputs depending on how full a cauldron is. The same goes for composters. They give different signal strengths depending on what music disc is in a jukebox. And even when you combine a hopper minecart with a detector rail, like this, you can detect how full a hopper minecart is. So lots of cool things that you can do with comparators. I would argue they're probably probably the most important redstone component in the game, I would argue. Particularly for me as someone that builds a lot of farms, so I deal a lot with item storage and item filters. But yeah. So, well, what have we talked about so far, Elainey? We've talked about how to get redstone, what it is. We've talked about powering redstone dust with toggles and pulses. We've talked about repeaters and delay. And we've talked about comparators and how they work. What do we think is the next thing?
We talked about the target block.
Target blocks don't give off signal.
They do when you hit them.
They do when you hit them. Okay. Well, okay. You want to know? If you want to say about the target block, target blocks. Elainey wants to talk about target blocks, so we'll talk about target blocks. Target blocks are another redstone source, and they're quite unique actually. And so it's pretty obvious that target blocks will give off signal strength when you hit them. But what you might not know is they actually give off a different signal strength depending on how close to the bullseye you hit. So if I hit right in the middle there, you can see it gives off a high signal strength. If I hit right at the edge, there you go, you see signal strength of 1. Now, this is not actually the main use for target blocks. And actually, this does kind of tie in quite well to what I wanted to talk about next, which is how to power components. And we'll get back to the target block in a little bit. But target blocks are very important when it comes to powering stuff.
But we've talked about powering stuff. That's what blocks are for. Torches.
We've talked about powering redstone dust.
And we use the redstone to power the components.
Yes, but it's not always as simple as putting something next to a redstone line.
I call shenanigans.
So I'm gonna get some powerable redstone components out here. We're gonna get a note block, and we're gonna get a lamp. We're not gonna get TNT. I tell you, I will get an iron trapdoor.
TNT.
So, as I'm sure you're aware, let's take the piston for example. The humble piston, one of my favorite items in the game. I'm going to use levers to power it because levers are cool. You can use pistons. You're just making yourself pedestals to stand on.
Yes.
You can use levers to power pistons, and in most cases, that piston can push a block. Now, if I replace this with a sticky piston, you can also use it to pull blocks. Now, manually turning pistons on and off is cool and all, but there are some cases, a lot of cases actually, if you've been in any of my streams where I've been in my redstone world, there's a lot of times we want to automatically do this. So, you know, we can power it like that. What we can't do though, necessarily, is power it like this.
Ah, yes.
Now, this is where there are some quirks to redstone components. In that some will, what I'm going to use the term pull the redstone signal away. So you will have seen how, like over here with the lever, if I place a repeater here, or a lever, or a button, when you place it down, it pulls a little tab off there like that. So that's what I mean when I say it pulls the redstone signal, pulls the redstone dust. Pistons, and droppers, and note blocks, they don't do that. So you can see I'm powering this. Nothing is happening. So how do we get around this then? And, you know, obviously, one of the ways we can get around it is to just power it like this. So you can see here now, the redstone line is actually pointing into the piston, which then powers it. However, sometimes that's not always possible to make the redstone line do that. So there's a few ways that we...
3 ways, including the one you just said.
Okay, Elainey can think of 3 ways. So, what's way number 1, Elainey?
Sorry, say that again?
What is way number 1? Elainey's going to teach us some redstone for a bit.
Well, way number 1 is the way you just said. Obviously,
Yes.
you have the redstone going directly into the back from wherever.
You just change the redstone line so it points into the sticky piston.
Yes.
Okay, what's your next way?
Well, if, say, for example, you did have to have it coming this way, obviously you can... Wait, Aldo, I might be skipping ahead, because I was going to say you could just put a block here, and then it powers the block, which powers the piston.
Yep. So,
Yay!
A lot of components, such as sticky pistons, such as note blocks. Let me get a little different color of concrete here, just for contrast's sake. We'll use red concrete because I know Elainey will want me to use red concrete.
Yes.
Okay, that's perhaps not the easiest. Wait, hold on. I have jukebox turned off. That's why it wasn't making a sound. Whereas then, again, for this, no sound. So redstone components, and this is one of the rules of power redstone components, they will be powered if a block adjacent to them is also powered. And this works even if it's the block below it as well. I realise I should probably put something in here. So you can see that I fired the button out, the dropper there. It also works if you're powering the redstone dust from on top. Like so. So redstone dust will also power the block that it is sat on. Hence why this piston is now extended. So that's another way. What else? What's another way that you thought of to power the piston?
Well, the third way, I say the third way is kind of like the first way. It's like the first way 2.0, because obviously repeaters pull the signal.
Yes.
I don't have a repeater. So obviously that doesn't do anything until you go boom, it pulls the signal in. But this is almost working almost similarly to the way the block works.
Yes. So yeah, as we said before, I mean you wouldn't even need a repeater there because you can just do that.
No,
so like you said, it's similar.
Unless you're wanting to do something with the ticks.
Yes. So the benefit of using a repeater here is you can add delay in. So if you need this piston to fire at a specific time, you can control that like so. Now there are certain blocks that this is not possible to do with. Let's go back to the powering the block next to it. Okay. This is great. This is concrete. Let's say I pick something like a slab. Any slab of some kind. Let's use purple slabs because they don't get enough love. Now, whichever slab this is, it is not going to work.
Would it not work if you moved the redstone on top of it, though?
Unless it's a double slab. As in if you have it like that.
No, I just mean because redstone can go...
Okay.
It doesn't go up slabs. It does go up slabs. Redstone goes up slabs as long as it's the top slabs.
Okay, redstone will go up slabs, yes.
But it
doesn't power this. And that is because this is a transparent block-ish, / not a full block. So there's certain blocks in the game, and generally speaking, if you can see through the block, it's not going to conduct redstone power. So again, let's pick some sort of glass. It's not powering. It's not powering. So yeah, a good general rule of thumb, if you can see through it, your redstone signal is not going to be conducted by it. There are some like kind of weird quirky exceptions to it. Observers are technically classed as transparent by the game.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so observers as a block behave like glass, like a glass block would. That is because the fact that it is a how it operates as a redstone component itself. So what it means actually you can do is you can run redstone dust like this, and that powers up like that. So very, very interesting one. But yeah, so those are the main ways that you have of powering a redstone component. So you can either make sure the redstone dust runs directly into it, or directly into a block adjacent to it. So let's say we've got a line here. This is how we want to power a piston. Let's say we've got another piston over here that we also want to power with this redstone line. And for argument's sake, let's say let's say we've got some like decorative like wall or something here that needs to stay here. Yes, I'm using diamond blocks because I can. So we can't put redstone dust here because we need to have this lovely, absolutely gorgeous, stunning wall here. But we also want to power this piston here. How are we going to do that? Well, you know, one is we could go around. However, we've run into an issue here, because this redstone dust is now not pointing into this block. And if we remember back to the fact that we need redstone dust pointing into a block to power it, this piston now doesn't power. Now we're going to come back to this solution in a second, and this is where our friend the target block is going to come in handy. So what are we going to do here?
Okay.
Well, you might think, if this block is powered, can we take a redstone signal out of it? No, we cannot. And this is because of a concept called strong and weak powering. So, have you heard this before, Elainey?
It's not ringing a bell.
No. So, strong and weak powering, it's a little bit confusing, but I'm going to try and really simplify it for you. Basically, if it's being powered by redstone dust, just redstone dust, that is weakly powered. If it is being powered by a redstone component that is actively pushing a signal into where it's powering, so say, for example, a repeater or a comparator or an observer, you know, these components, they all have a dedicated output that the component itself is like, hey, here's a redstone signal, it's going into this next block. They will strongly power. And so the way it goes is redstone dust can be powered by a weakly powered object. Sorry, no. Redstone dust can be powered by a strongly powered object, and redstone components can take power from a weakly powered object. I think I've got that the right way around. So here, this block here is weakly powered. And it doesn't matter if strongly or weakly powered, redstone components like pistons that are activated by redstone, they will still be activated because at the end of the day, to them, this is just powered.
Yes, to them, power is power.
Power is power. Doesn't matter if it's strong or weak, it still gets turned on. So here, this block is weakly powered. So this redstone dust cannot be powered by it. However, a redstone repeater as a redstone component can pull power from it. The same goes for a comparator. Now, this also works the other way around. If we put a repeater this side going into the block, because the repeater then strongly powers this block, we can take a redstone signal out of here, and we can also then stick a block here that gets weakly powered by the redstone dust and powers the piston. And from here, obviously we can't take redstone outputs from this unless we put another repeater there, in which case then we can, like so. Or we can take repeater outputs from here. Now let's go back to our original idea, which is, okay, let's just route the redstone line around here. And oh no, what's happened here? This piston is turned off because there's no longer a redstone signal running into this. Well, we could then say, let's run it around here perhaps. This is getting all a bit sprawly though. And there's a little friend of ours over here that we can use to fix this. Because target blocks have a unique property. Well, not unique property, but unique for just a block. In that they can pull redstone signal. So what we can do here is if we replace this block with a target block, the target block then pulls the redstone signal into itself and powers the sticky piston, which is particularly useful when you have, for example, a row of sticky pistons. So they're very useful in long lines of pistons, particularly in cases where you need to put blocks on the top of here for either decorative sake or functional sake. So like in my flower farm, shifting for flower farm, I have a setup similar to this because you can then just run a redstone line along here and the target block pulls it in, so you can power all of those at the same time. And again, if you're building redstone contraptions that are very timing specific, eliminating any unnecessary delay due to, like, instead of this using repeaters, which add delay, you can throw target blocks in instead, which is instant. Now I am going to talk about one of the more weird aspects of powering blocks, which is called quasi connectivity, which I feel like is a bit of a buzz phrase in Redstone now.
It is very much a buzz phrase.
Yeah, or QC for short. Now, the principle behind quasi connectivity operates around doors. Which sounds a bit weird at
Wait,
first, but
what?
bear with me.
Bear? Where?
Bear with me. So, let's take a door here, for example. I'm going to need a note block as well. Where's the note block? There we go. If I power this block next to the door opens. Also, it annoys me that it's... There we go. This door opens. Now, doors, you'll notice, are made up of two blocks. A top half and a bottom half. And by powering this block, you power both the bottom half and the top half. Now, that kind of sounds a bit weird to say that you're powering the bottom half, even though where the power is coming from, which is this block here, is not directly attached to it. And this is what quasi-connectivity is. Now, if I place the exact same setup with a sticky piston and a note block, now this is very important. Oh, actually, I'm not going to place the note block in for a second. So we still have this diagonal setup. So pretend this is the bottom half of the door, basically. If I power this, nothing happens. However, if I then place a block next to this piston, you will see that it powers. Now this is nothing special to do with this block. And I can do the same here. I can take, for example, a glass block to prove that it's not that block that is powering anything. As we mentioned earlier, transparent blocks don't do anything with redstone signal. They don't conduct it. So it can't be this block. Right? Now this is something to do with what is called block update. So because of the nature of this setup, this block needs something to tell the game, hey, this block is powered. Because this block is not directly attached to the power source, that this power source is not telling the game that this block is powered. In the case of our door, if we come back here, that is done by the top half of the door. By powering the top half of the door, it's then saying to the bottom half of the door, hey, you're powered, you need to move with me. Which you don't get over here. So in a lot of cases, you can put a note block here. And so that note block gets powered, which then tells the piston, hey, you're powered, you need to push. Or hey, you're not powered, you need to retract. Very commonly, you can see this used for doors. Like so. And you can make use of it because another piston can also update the piston. So those are both powered.
Okay.
And then you depower them and they open.
I don't know if this is just me, but some of this actually makes total sense.
Good, because that is the aim of this. So that is essentially what QC is. But yeah, fundamentally it's all based around this door principle, and it's not just pistons that work for this. There's a few different components. So
also
dispensers.
The door, while it has a top and bottom part, it's still one item.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want just the top part to open.
Yeah. So dispensers and droppers also function with QC. But yeah, but that is how QC works, and yeah, the main two uses for that are powering like high stacks of pistons. Where's my redstone thing? So powering up like this means that you can have redstone lines like this. And you can power all of this and get this lovely whole vertical line of pistons up. Now, quasi connectivity does not exist in Bedrock.
No, it does not. Can confirm.
Which I think is one of Java players' biggest complaints about it. To be fair, Java players and Redstone both love and absolutely hate quasi connectivity because it solves so many problems, but it also creates so many problems.
Yeah, because if you're not careful, you can get your circuits
you can then accidentally power circuits that you don't want to power. Yes. But anyway, speaking of pistons, we're going to get into the wonderful world of pistons, I guess.
Piston, 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 piston.
So pistons are very wonderful things. They are incredibly important to automation and farms. I work with them a lot. And, probably one of the first farms you'll build in a world is an automatic sugarcane farm, which make use of pistons to break sugarcane. But they can be used in a lot of other fun things. So, obviously, we've talked about you can power pistons like that. You can power pistons with blocks next to them, like that. You can power them like that from above. And you can power them from below. I'm also going to just quickly do that. 10 tile drops off, otherwise my inventory is going to get very clogged with levers. So the only surface of a piston that you can directly place components or redstone on is the back surface. Nothing happens here.
They just pop.
And facing down, you can place stuff here. Or you can place redstone dust on them, like this. You cannot place it on the sides, because the second I power it, it instantly pops off. Same thing here. Same thing goes for redstone dust on there. The redstone dust just instantly disappears. This is because as soon as you power this, this actually then is not a full block. So if I put a block next to it, you can see there's 4 pixels missing because that's where the piston head is. That just looks wrong as well. It doesn't do anything, but of course if I retract that, that then pops off. This is also different to Bedrock. In Bedrock, you can place redstone lines on top of pistons and still power them. So now we've gotten around powering pistons. Let's push some blocks. So I'm going to replace this with a regular piston, and we're going to get some more concrete. Let's get some light blue concrete.
Yeah.
We're going to place a block, and we're going to push it, and we're going to place a block. We're going to push it, and we're going to keep doing this. And soon enough, we are going to run into a bit of a problem, because there is a limit to the number of blocks that a piston can push. Now that limit is 12 blocks. So if you try and push 13 blocks, that happens. I could not have timed that more perfectly. Oh, sorry. So you'll see here, we're still powering the piston. We can power it here. We can try and power it with a repeater. But nothing we can do is ever going to make this move, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 blocks here. At most, a piston can push 12 blocks. And you can see here, the second we break that block, it extends. There are a small group of blocks that flat out cannot be pushed by pistons. The first group of blocks is basically anything with an inventory that the player can interact with. Or the player can store items in, I should say. So chests, droppers, dispensers, crafters, I believe, cannot be pushed by pistons. Yeah. So if a block has an inventory, you can put something in that inventory and then you can leave. You can't push it with a piston. This is another difference that Bedrock can do. However, items such as regular crafting tables or smithing tables, for example, you can push them by pistons. Because I can't put something in there and then leave. Because it will always bring it back into my inventory. Now this is very useful. Because we need to use those to stop flying machines. Other common examples of blocks that you can't push with pistons are both types of obsidian. See there. And you can see there. Bedrock obviously cannot be pushed by pistons. Reinforced deep slate as well, the block that makes up the ancient city portal frame. All of those cannot be pushed by pistons, and there's probably a few others that I'm forgetting. So we've covered pistons. Pistons can push blocks. They can pull blocks as well if they're sticky. And they can be powered from basically all sides, provided there is a block there to support what is doing the powering. Let's talk about observers next. So that we're moving towards flying machines, but there's a few other individual components we want to talk about first. So observers. Now we've briefly covered them in that they emit a very short pulse when an item is placed in front of them, when a lever is flicked in front of them. And so what this basically comes down to is what is known as block state changes. So if something in front of it changes state, so for example, a lever being powered, turned on, or turned off, a block physically being placed or broken there, repeaters having their delay changed. If something changes in front of an observer, it will emit a signal. There's also some really funky niche mechanics, one of which is the interactions that logs and leaves have. So leaves have a hidden variable which basically detects how close they are to a log to determine whether they can decay. This is true for naturally generated leaves, but it's also true for persistent leaves that you physically place in the world yourself, which is very useful because it means you can use logs by placing a log next to a leaf to trigger an observer. But yeah, so all of this can happen. Water flowing can trigger it. Dispensers firing, trapdoors flicking. But yeah, all boils down to if something changes in front of an observer, it will trigger a pulse. And that pulse strongly powers the block that the little butt looks into. That's always the way I remember it. That's the way I remember it being called from watching Python many years ago now. I say many years ago, it's like 5 years ago now I would have been watching him.
That's still quite a few years.
It is quite a few years ago. But yeah, the little redstone butt is what does the powering. Now again, I have a resource pack here. So also from Vanilla Tweaks that I use for the smooth redstone that adds arrows onto the sides of observers that shows what direction they're going to be powered. It's similar as well with hoppers. If I have them pointing in a sideways direction, there's a little arrow on them that points sideways. Observers as well also detect a block state change if they get moved, because the block in front of them changes from being this one to this one. So you can see as I flick this, the observer is firing. Now, the observer will always power the block that it ends up on. So I power that, it powers this repeater. If I detract it, it powers this repeater. So it basically, observers will move and then they will power. Now this is basically the whole principle that flying machines use to keep moving. But there's one more component we need to talk about first with flying machines. And that is, okay, technically two components. That is slime and honey. Now these are very similar, but also quite different.
One is tasty, one is not.
Yes, but no. So slime and honey are, I guess, what we can broadly call sticky blocks, in that stuff sticks to them. So again, I'm going to pull out a sticky piston. I'm going to attach a wall block there. I'm going to attach a wall block there. And I'm going to put levers here. Now, if I push this, the slime block or the wool block is stuck to the slime block, which means it gets pushed with it when I power this. If I replace this with another normal block, like a wool block, it doesn't happen. The same goes for honey. I push it, the wool is stuck to it. If I replace it, it's not. Now, this is really cool because you can create loads of fun shapes just like so, because slime blocks can also stick to each other and go forth, and you can create loads of fun shapes like this up until you hit the piston push limit. If I put too many blocks on here, all of a sudden it doesn't move because of the push limit that I mentioned earlier. Now there's another fun interaction between these two, which is that slime and honey will not stick to each other. Now this is very useful for creating massive doors. And my Interrealm Season 5 starter base, the Judge Wink Wink, may or may not make use of this. And so what this means then is you can get past stuff like the push limit, like this. Now, we wouldn't be able to make this entirely out of slime, because it is 3 by 3, which is 9 by 2, 18 blocks. So if we tried to do this all out of slime or all out of honey, it wouldn't work. But if we power these simultaneously, it would work. Now there is another key difference between slime and honey, and that is their interactions to be powered. So if I replace these with note blocks, which again, as a normal block, stick both to honey and to slime, and if I put an observer attached here, powering the block next to the note block, we should hear the note block fire. Because as we've just learnt about observers, when they move, they power. So here, huzzah, powers the slime block, which powers the note block. Hang on a second. That's done nothing. And that is because honey blocks are transparent and will not conduct a redstone signal. And that is the key way that honey and slime is different. Is you can power blocks through slime, but you cannot power blocks through honey. And it's this principle that we use to make flying machines. So combining everything that we've learned about pistons and slime blocks and observers, we can make a flying machine. So a flying machine is basically something that pushes a few blocks forward and then pulls them back. And at this point, I've realized I've forgotten to mention something about pistons that you may have seen me use, is that if you give it a short enough pulse, it can be forced to spit the block out. So normally when you power and depower pistons, it pushes the block and it pulls the block. However, if I power it from here, which very quickly powers and depowers it, you can see we're left with the block here.
Question.
Yes.
So, but if you want it to spit out the block, why not just use a normal piston?
Because sometimes you may want to do this and pull it back.
But why not just keep it powered and then pull it back when you're ready to pull it back?
And this is where flying machines come in. Because you can also do this with an observer. And changing states. Because an observer pulse is so short, so once it pulses, it forces pistons to spit their blocks out. Now, if we place blocks like this, this is how we create a flying machine. So a flying machine pushes a few blocks forwards, and then it pulls the blocks that just did the pushing backwards. So if I show you this with levers, so we first push these blocks forwards by giving this piston a short pulse. So basically this is a piston and a slime block attached together. So by pushing this slime block, we also push the piston. And then by pulling this slime block, we pull this piston back. So if I give this piston a quick power, it pulls it back. And then we can do this. But of course, I don't want to be standing around doing this anytime I want to, use a farm. That's boring. So we can make use of observers and the fact that observers trigger when they get moved. So I'm hoping I'm placing these correctly. It should be like that. I've not made a flying machine in a hot minute, so you'll have to bear with me if this goes wrong.
I only made a flying machine once and it didn't work. Pretty sure I had to get you to come fix it. It's either you or Jurassics.
Possibly. Now, we're going to use obsidian here as immovable blocks, so our flying machine doesn't just get sent to the horizon. And now, if we trigger one observer, it will move in a direction. And again, I'm going to slow the game down here. So bear with the really slow movement, and hopefully we can see a bit more in slow motion about what is going. So if I place a block here, we can see the observer firing. So that observer pushes those pistons, which fires that observer, which pulls it back again. So it pushes, fires, pulls, fires, pushes, fires, pulls. Now this also then fires, but because there is an obsidian block there,
I've been seeing it in slow-mo.
Yeah, we can't actually push the flying machine any further. Now this particular flying machine is what is known as two-directional, which means if we trigger this observer, it can go back the other way. And I broke that too quickly and broke it.
The observer looks so angry.
Let's try this again. Now, where you may have seen this elsewhere is in sweepers. So sweepers are probably the most commonly used flying machine. They're used to clear ocean monuments sometimes to get rid of water. They are used at the bottom of world eaters to, again, clear water or lava and to sometimes push blocks out of the way. They're used in a number of different crop farms, bamboo farms, sugarcane farms, where you can basically make a massive field and then send it off, and voila. Now, I mentioned 2 seconds ago about world eaters. World eaters are also a flying machine, and they pretty funky. So this is like a basic flying machine module. Because our slime is it conducts redstone signal, we can put other cool things on here, like other observers. And on top of that, provided we don't go past the push limit, so it's important to remember we count the blocks. So there's a piston, an observer is 2, a slime block is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we currently have 7 blocks being pushed by this piston. We don't need to count these blocks because they're not being pushed by this piston.
Yes.
So from here, I can put, blocks there, for example. I could put a block there. And now if I send it off, these pistons also fire because they're being powered by this observer as it moves. And so you can do all sorts of weird and wacky things with this, which is how world eaters are made and how moving houses are made. And but yeah, flying machine contraptions though are very complicated, very difficult to do, and I am by no means an expert in. This is about as complicated of a flying machine as I know how to make. So we're now going to have a look at the rest of the redstone inventory, at some of the components we've not covered yet, and do a brief rundown on what they're like and how they work. So first up is the copper bowl. So these come in all the different oxidized variants, one of my favorite components. And yes, a very, very cool component. Now, whereas if we come over here, we have a redstone lamp, which you may first think, what is the difference between the two? If I put a lever on both of them, they both light up. However, if I turn them off, the copper bulb stays lit. And if I turn them on or power the levers again, that turns on, but the copper bulb turns off. Now, the copper bulb is what is known as a T flip-flop. Don't worry about what that means now. We will cover some simple logic circuits at the end of this video for those that want to know. But if you're really just getting to grips with redstone, then honestly, do not worry about it. But basically what it means is it turns a pulse into a constant. So again, let's take our lamp over here. If we put a pulse, i.e. a button, into this lamp, it turns it on and it turns it off. The lamp pulses. If I put a pulse into the bulb, it just turns on. And if I put a pulse into it again, it just turns off. Now you will have noticed that there's a little red dot that lights up on the bulb. And that lights up and stays lit when the bulb is powered. So you can hear this lever is on, which means it is being powered. If I turn the lever off, the lamp stays on, but the red dot goes away, so you know it's not powered. Now if I do this again, the bulb is off, but the red dot is on. So we know it is still being powered, even though the bulb is off. And I can turn it off again, and the bulb is no longer being powered. Now, why is this particularly useful in terms of redstone? It just seems an overcomplicated way of lighting a room up. And it's very useful because we can take a comparator output of this. This is another block that the comparator can be used with. Like I said, comparator... Hey, what are you typing?
Sorry.
That was deafening. Alright, let me try this again. This is another block that we can take a comparator out of. So the comparator, again, as I say, probably the most useful redstone component in the inventory. So if I power this, the comparator then stays powered. So redstone bulbs, whether powered or unpowered, can give a redstone output. Now, unfortunately, this signal strength does not vary with the level of oxidation. I would have loved if it did, if the more oxidized gave out a lower redstone signal like they do with light levels. But hey, it's still pretty cool. There we go. Basically, yeah. This does the exact same thing as all of this, basically. So if I have a bulb here, press the button, it powers the bulb. If I press the button again, it depowers the bulb. Now compare that to over here, where if I press the button, it powers the bulb. If I depress the button, it depowers the bulb. So it's a lot more compact. It was an absolutely brilliant addition to the game. And I use it a lot in my redstone and farm designs. Also, but yeah, so that is the copper bulb. The important thing to note with these is that
Oh, God, that's way too many.
observers with copper bulbs, they don't just detect them being on or off, they detect them being powered and depowered as well. So turning a bulb on will trigger an observer twice. Once and twice when it depowers, you see? Which is an important thing to note. It is something that I constantly forget, and then I try and implement in my redstone, and then it doesn't work, and then I remember why it doesn't work. But that is the copper bulb. Let's have a look next. So next is the sculk sensor and calibrated sculk sensor. Now we briefly looked at the sculk sensor in that it gives a specific output depending on how far away you are. So you can see we're far away, it's giving a low output. We're close, it's giving a high output. Now the calibrated sculk sensor is a very special type of it, which again, we make use of comparators. And by doing this, we can actually filter what type of sounds we want to trigger it. And you can check on the wiki for this, but for example, if I set this to be 8, so 8 tiles in a crafter gives a signal strength of 8, this means it won't trigger if I'm doing anything other than eating a food. And with eating food, it always triggers at the end of it. However, if I run around it, if I, flick a if I flick a trapdoor, it's not going to do any sound. And so this can actually be used to create lots of fun things, secret entrances, for example. I've used them previously. That early game when you were still using shields before totems, that signal strength of 3 actually also applies to just using your shield, which is very, very cool. Yeah, or using a firework rocket. And the other thing to note with sculk sensors as well is you can use wool to stop them from hearing you. That's just a regular sculk sensor, like that. However, that doesn't happen for regular blocks. Whoops. See, it still hears me. You can also waterlog them. And that will still trigger them. You can see the little particle going every so often. However, you can no longer hear them, which is very good for making traps in worlds where you are allowed to do so. Very important. The other thing you can do with sculk sensors is use amethyst blocks to propagate sculk sensor signal. I believe I can never remember entirely how this works. It may be a calibrated sculk sensor thing. Hang on. Yeah. So you can just about see the particle when I move, propagating ahead. Which is very good for sending wireless redstone signals. Next up, we have tripwire hooks and string. Very important that they are linked together. Tripwire hooks can only be placed on the sides of blocks, like so. And if you link them through like that, they create a redstone signal when you pass through. Now this strongly powers the block that they are attached against, which means you can take just a single redstone line. You don't need repeaters or anything out of it. And you can use it to power lamps like that. Pretty self-explanatory. You can also create like grids of string as well. But the important thing to remember is you always need 2 tripwire hooks. Next up is the lectern, and I'm specifically going to need a book and quill for this. And as a general rule of thumb, if you see something in the redstone inventory and you think, why on earth is that there? It is usually because it can interact with a comparator. And that is very much true of the lectern. Because a lectern will give a different signal strength depending on what page of a book you're on, up to 15. So I'm up to page 15, it gives a signal strength of 15. On page 9, it gives a signal strength of 9. And that is the lectern, and that is why the lectern is. Daylight detectors. Daylight detectors are one of my favorite components, and very much underutilized, I think. And so a daylight detector, yes, they turn on and off depending on whether it's day or night, but what a lot of people don't also realize is they actually give a different signal strength depending on what time of day. So here, the time of day is noon, the sun is straight up in the sky, it gives a signal strength of 15. If I set time to the beginning of the day, that's not the beginning of the day, 0 is the beginning of the day, there's a time of 7. If I set it to dusk, it's also 7. So it peaks at noon at 15, and then either side, it decays as you get close to dusk. Somewhere between 13,000 and 15,000 game ticks of game time, i.e. when the moon is about there. However, you can actually change the function of a daylight detector by right-clicking with an empty hand to put it into night mode. And in that case, it'll do the opposite. So at midnight, it peaks, although it only peaks at a signal strength of 11, apparently. Unless it's not quite midnight.
Basically, if you had 2, one normal, one inverted, you'd always have power.
You would, yes. And so here you can see we're at noon, and it's night mode, so it's turned off. I can switch it to day mode, it turns on. It also makes daylight detectors quite a cool toggle for downwards facing observers. Because you can just right click them, and because it's a change of state, the observer can see them. Okay, lightning rods. Lightning rods are a very cool redstone component. Although not particularly useful. And I apologize for your ears, this may be quite loud. But lightning rods will give a redstone signal out when they get hit by lightning.
I did not know that.
See by that. Yeah. And I believe as well, they power the block that they are stood on. Yep. And they strongly power, as you can tell by the fact that it is emitting a redstone signal. Now, another fun thing is if they are not waxed, but they are at a level of oxidization, it deoxidizes them. And it will deoxidize any surrounding unwaxed copper. Next up, we have the crafter. We have briefly covered this already, but the crafter, you can put items in with a hopper. And they will fill up going left to right like this. And it will keep filling up evenly like so. And then when it receives a redstone signal, it will spit out the item, the recipe item. Now, if it can't do something there like that, then it just won't fire. Now, you can also, as I said before, block the slots up. So if you want to, say, convert blocks of redstone into redstone dust, you can do that. And that will spit out all 9 redstone dust at once. It won't spit them out one by one. It spits out the whole recipe, the full 9. Which is very, very nice. And again, you will see in a lot of the newer iterations of my farm designs that I will be building next season of Interrealms, and season 2 of Farming Minecraft is coming back. Well, Farming Minecraft is coming back for season 2 with Elainey. It's very exciting. You will see a lot of auto crafters for farm collection systems.
Yes.
These are very, very cool items, very useful for item storage. Next comes the hopper. Now, hoppers. Okay, I know I said the comparator might be the most useful redstone component. The hopper might be the only. I would maybe put the hopper on the same level of it as it. Hoppers are incredibly useful. Incredibly useful because they allow the automatic transport of items. And you can place hoppers facing many different ways. You can place them into containers and they will automatically pick up items and deposit them into the container that they're facing into. You can put them in a chest on top of a hopper and it will pull an item out of the chest and pop it in. You can run hoppers into other hoppers, into a container, and it will end up in here. Now, it does take a little bit of time, and hoppers can be a little bit bad for performance. They have since been a little bit more optimized, but yeah, loads and loads of hoppers can be a little awkward. Hoppers, they also have a kind of a priority order. So if you have hoppers stacked like this, and you will see this very, very commonly in collection systems for farms, hoppers can technically move items 2 ways. They can push items and they can pull items. So let's take a hopper like this, pop a container on top of it, pop a container below it. So first and foremost, they can pull an item out of the container above it into it. And they can also push an item from itself into a container below it. And there is a priority for which this is done. At least in Java, I think it's the same in Bedrock, but it might not be. So don't hold me to this. And the priority is a hopper will pull or be pulled from before it pushes an item. And that means that when you have a setup like this, the item will always end up in the bottom container. If it's coming through like this. If I stick a whole stack in here, then it will split it evenly between the top and bottom. Because there is also a cooldown for which a hopper can do said actions. So essentially, whilst this hopper is on cooldown for pulling an item, this hopper can then push an item across into that. However, if I stick a stack of items in here, when they can only be pulled out here one by one, the cooldown essentially syncs up. and you end up with only items in the bottom, which is very nice for organizing storage systems. Hoppers can also be locked. So if you power a hopper, or more accurately, if you power a block next to a hopper, that hopper then cannot move items. I can stick a stack of items in here, but they won't move because this hopper is powered. Now this is the whole entire principle behind item filters, or certainly one item filter in particular, and that is the Impulse SV item filter. Designed I don't know how many years ago, and still functional to this day, where you have an item line running across here. That can be a hopper line like this, it can be a water stream, but fundamentally the key thing is it goes over this hopper here. I think I might have built this too low. Now this is a basically tileable filter, so if we wanted to, we can fit it next to each other. So the word tileable basically means it's, or rather one block wide tileable, means it's one block wide, and tileable, you can stick it directly next to each other without affecting it. And the way we do this is we need comparators, repeaters, torches, and redstone dust. We use the comparators to detect the contents of these hoppers. We'll get to that in a minute. Redstone dust all the way down there. Repeaters facing there. And torches facing here. So next we put 41 items in the first slot, and then a filter item in the other 4. So these are something that isn't going to be going through the system. We do the same with another item here, and again a filter item. And now this is set up so as soon as the signal strength hits 3, it will drop down here and power through here. Now the reason why none of these are emptying out is because this torch is powering this block, which, because it's next to the hopper, is locking this hopper. So it can't pull out of this hopper, and because this hopper doesn't have anywhere to push into, all the items get stuck here. However, the second we put some more items in here, we can see that the power then goes onto this block, weakly powering this block. The repeater can power out of it. It can turn this torch off. So I don't think we've actually covered this yet. A redstone torch, if it receives a power into the block that it is attached to, so it can be any of this, it will actually turn off. And that is known as a signal inversion. Or, we invert the redstone torch. And so this makes use of that by turning the torch off, unlocking this hopper, and then we get redstone torches, in this case, down here. In this case, we can put comparators into that filter, and we see comparators start trickling down there. These are all mostly just containers. The chiseled bookshelf is another block that interacts with, you guessed it, a comparator. And you actually get an achievement for that called the Power of Books. Now, if you take any book, you can put it into a slot. And then the last interacted slot actually determines what signal strength is emitted from the bookshelf. So if you put a book in slot 1, it emits a signal strength of 1. If you put a book in slot 6, then it emits a signal strength of 6. If I take a book out of slot 1, it goes back to 1 because slot 1 is the last interacted slot. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from top left to bottom right. This does mean that once you start interacting with a chiseled bookshelf, it is impossible to have a signal strength of 0 because you cannot interact with a 0 slot. Next up, the most recent addition, I believe, is the shelf.
Yay.
Now, the shelves are cool, not really because of how they work, but because of how they look. They're a great decorative block. They come in all the different wood types, and basically you can shove full stacks of items into each slot, like that, and then you can pick them out with an empty hand again. Why are they in the redstone section? Because you can power them, and if you power them, they become a nice big slot. And this is actually equal to 3 inventory slots. Now, if I remember correctly, they start affecting from your right 3 inventory slots. There you go. So you can put the right 3 inventory slots in once. And where it gets super cool is if you power up to 3 of them next to each other, they actually link together. Now, this unfortunately doesn't work for any more than that. The reason being is 3 next to each other is a total of 9 slots, which means you can put your
Essentially
entire
speaking,
hot bar into
you
one
can swap
shelf.
hot bars with it.
Yep, and then you can grab it. And yeah, as Elainey has said, I can grab lots more items. And if I just right click, it swaps out the hotbar. Very cool tech that people don't really use. They will just use it to make really cool looking pillars. But you know what? Fair enough. The subsequent items are all pretty similar. They are mainly just containers. You can take comparator outputs from them. Jukeboxes will give a different signal strength depending on what music disc you've played. Composters give a different signal strength depending on the level that they're filled up. Cauldrons give a different signal strength depending on how much water is in there. So you can take out small slithers of water with a water bottle, which then, leaves 1, 2, or 3/3 of the cauldron full of water, giving a signal strength of 1, 2, or 3 with a comparator. Then we have all of the minecart stuffs, which is not really relevant here. Boats and doors and gates, which again, pretty self-explanatory. Doors and gates and trapdoors, you open them when you power them, you close them when you depower them. But yeah, and that covers basically all the items, all the necessary items, except dispensers and droppers that I realize I've forgotten. Now, functionally, they're very similar. They look very similar. Dispensers, everything is round. Droppers are either very happy or are rectangular. So the way they differ is dispensers can actually use certain items. So they can use bone meal to bone meal crops or plants, or mostly used as for trees. They can dispense TNT. So if you put TNT in there, you activate it, it dispenses a lit TNT, which will then promptly explode. You can use shears inside them to automatically shear sheep. So that's how automatic wool farms function. Fire chargers, they shoot fireballs. There's a whole number of different items that dispensers can actually interact with and use. And if it can't use it, it will just spit it out like it does with a dropper. And droppers are very good because they are entirely balanced probability wise. So if you have 2 items in there, there is a 50-50 chance it'll be one or the other. 3 items, it'll be a third chance each. 4 a quarter, 5 a fifth, etc. etc. Now you can weight this by filling more slots up. For example, if I have 5 diamond blocks to 1 redstone block, then there's a there's a 5/6 chance that it's a diamond block and a 1/6 chance that it's a redstone block. Now that is not affected by the number of items in each slot. I could stick a stack of redstone blocks here and only have 1 or 2 diamond blocks. It's still going to be a 5/6 chance that it's a diamond block and a 1/6 chance that it's a redstone block. And I'm about to kick Elainey if she keeps messing with the probabilities here. Now there's one last lot of redstone circuits to do.
Ooh, what?
And
What are these?
we've
What are
talked
these?
about them a couple times already, but that is redstone clocks. There's a
What are
number
these?
of different ways that you can do these. Obviously,
There are three types of clock I know.
there are 3 main types of clock that people use for things. Firstly is the comparator clock. We showcased this earlier. Really short, quick clock, really easy to use. I use this so many times in item collection systems, particularly nether-based item collection systems, where I basically just need to use a load of hoppers and a load of droppers to spit them out onto an iceway and use slime blocks to push them around. So you'll see this a lot in the initial sections of my item collection systems. The next one, really, really common, is the repeater clock. Now, a lot of people actually do this wrong. Well, not wrong, but they do this in a really awkward way.
I wonder if you're going to do the one that I always build when I need a basic clock. When I say a basic clock, I mean a very basic clock.
Which they do. How do people do it? Is it like that? And then they like power like that?
Oh.
Which is great and all, but yeah, then
I feel like this is a better version of the one I do.
this is the one that people do wrong. Because
Okay, do you want to see the one I do?
You have to turn it off by breaking. There's a really easy way, and if you move the lever up there and place a torch there,
Oh, see, that's the one I do.
then you can
But I
turn it
do
on and
it.
off.
But whenever I do it, I only do it with like 1 repeater and more redstone.
Yes, like this is a really easy one. You can really easily control the length. You can
The only thing I would say is if you
adjust the tick
if you
settings,
do it with 1
or you
repeater,
can,
you cannot have it on the fastest tick, otherwise it will burn out. You need to have it at least on 2 ticks.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, you remind me there are actually 4 common clocks. Sorry. Right, before we get onto that one, I'm going to talk about hopper clocks. Hopper clocks are the best way of doing long period clocks.
I'd say long period, but also ones that you want long, but especially if you need them finely tuned for some reason.
Yes. Now, there's a number of ways of setting this up. There's like 3 or 4 like different variations of this. I use it.
Doing it differently to the way I do it.
Yes. Do you set it up with the blocks on with the pistons on top?
No, I do it so it's basically just 1 wide. So it's 1 long line. Wait, no.
Really?
Oh, I can't actually remember. It's been so long. No, I'm talking crap. Ignore me. I think I do it your way. I'm just forgetting about the damn pistons.
So yeah, there's this way, and essentially, if you put a few items in here, you can get it. Now this is a fairly quick hopper clock, but you can stack items in here, and this very quickly, as you can see, gets quite
You can make
long.
it very
Now,
long.
you can pretty much identically do it a slightly different way by placing the redstone dust like this. I forgot to put the redstone block in. There we go. And this is working exactly the same, but it's just one wide vertical.
Yay.
Place it back like this. You can then actually use this to make an even longer hopper clock by stacking them on top of each other. So,
What sort of contraption would want such a long hopper clock though?
so
You'd want them
my
stacked.
ice farm on Interrealms,
Okay.
which I can't use daylight sensors for because people constantly sleep. Before the daylight sensors can like trigger the flying machines, I have set up to a really, really slow hopper clock like this, because even filling these maxed out,
Yeah.
the clock period is too slow. So basically, all you do is you set it up like this. So this redstone block is almost constantly powering these pistons and locking them. And then essentially, if I put one or two items in this, every single time this clock fires, it lets through one item in this clock.
Ah.
And you can very quickly get astronomically long clocks. Like we're talking IRL years long clocks. If you like fully stack them up. Because it's exponential, right? Now, these are also really easy to turn off. You just grab a lever, well, in this case, and you just power one of these. And you see this will run out. But because this never hits 0, this piston can never retract. And so that's how you can turn those off. Now the fourth type of clock is, and we briefly saw it in action earlier, is a torch burnout clock. So obviously we've said before, and if you watch the next season of Interrealms and you watch the next season of Farming Minecraft, you will see this in my new super smelter design that I have made. We've seen obviously that a torch, when you power it, inverts and turns off. However, we know that torches themselves are also a power source. So if you use a torch to power itself, so pretend, I'm not going to show it off quite just yet, so pretend we have redstone dust here. That will then turn on because it's powered by this block. It then turns off this torch, which depowers this, which turns off the redstone dust. That then turns on the torch, which powers this block, which powers the redstone dust, which depowers the torch, and so on and so forth. Now, there has to be coded into the game somewhere to stop this, otherwise it would crash the game, pretty much. So, what actually happens is the torch burns out and it just turns off. Like so. Now, if you basically re-trigger this by just updating this bottom block, you can re-trigger the burnout clock. And these burnout clocks are really, really nice because they trigger 8 times every single time.
Oh, so you would use this if you wanted like if you wanted it to pulse a specific amount of times and then stop.
Yes. So in my new super smelter design, I have one burnout clock hooked up to 2 droppers, and it drops 16. Sorry, no, I have it hooked up to 3 droppers, and that drops 3 times 8, 24 items into the hopper minecart every single time. So I can distribute it across 24 furnaces completely evenly every single time. It's also really useful for ender pearl dispensers. You hook up one burnout clock to 2 droppers and you get a stack of ender pearls every single time.
Oh yeah, burnout.
There is a fifth clock, which is the observer clock. Now, the other thing with observer clocks is that they're actually differently timed depending on whether you trigger them by manually placing the observer in or by pushing the observer in with a piston. So manually in placing the observer gives you a, I think, 4 game tick clock. So 2 redstone tick clock. But pushing it in with a piston is a 1 tick. 1 redstone tick, 2 game tick clock.
Why?
It's to do with how the observers interact by powering when they move. So when you manually place a observer in, the only thing that then triggers from powering is the one observer seeing the other observer being placed. When you move it in with a piston, you get the one observer seeing the other observer being pushed, but that other observer also starts powering because it's been pushed in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I understand.
So if we compare these side by side, you can see this one is triggering much quicker than this one, despite the fact that they are cosmetically the exact same. And this is always something to bear in mind when you are building these sorts of clocks in your farms and testing them, is make sure you test it with a piston. But anyway, that should then wrap it up. Here, the repeater clock, is it faster than double observer? No. So the double observer clock is the same speed as a comparator clock, I believe. And there are some weird things that you can do to get like crazy fast clocks. But yeah, we're not going to worry about those.
That is more
This is
advanced redstone.
yes, this is
for
not a
another
tutorial
day.
to do weird things in. But yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed watching that. I hope everybody learned some stuff and wasn't too confused. It's like the old saying goes, it's quite simple, really. Oh, I'm sorry, I had to get that in somewhere. I had to get it in somewhere.
I roll my eyes at you, sir. I don't think I've ever rolled my eyes harder.
Oh. But
You're
no, I
so
hope
chuffed, aren't you?
I am absolutely chuffed to bits. I twirl my mustache at you. Absolutely gonna call Mumbo out for not having a real mustache, you know. I have mine, and it is actually much more visible now. I'm saying people can't say that my mustache is invisible. It is looking pretty decent, if I may say so myself.
Okay.
Yes. So that'll be it for the guide. Like I said, do please leave a comment if you have any questions, queries, if you think I missed something, if something didn't make sense, or like if you're watching the video, jump into my stream, come ask me questions. I'm more than happy to answer stuff live. You can find me over at twitch.tv/thechemist77. We have actually recorded this on a live stream, so by all means, come along. Make sure you don't miss anything out. Yeah, but that'll be it from me for today. And yeah, lots of exciting stuff coming up. Interrealm Season 5 starts next March. Farming Minecraft Season 2 starts next year as well, before that. And yeah, lots of other exciting content stuff to come. Keep an eye out for part 2 of the random Minecraft challenge that Elainey and I have been doing. That's going to be great fun. And
Yeah.
but that'll be it from me for today. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for the follows as well. We hit another follower goal. Love to see it.
Woo!
Thank you. The support is just insane. Like I really, really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to really cracking down on content next year, getting a lot more YouTube done as well. But yeah, I will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.